Hello, and welcome to NDT Now's podcast Level Up. Today's podcast is brought to you by Edify Technologies, the world leader in advanced non-destructive testing solutions designed to always keep you beyond current. For more information, visit edify.com. Our Level Up podcast is like a virtual mentoring session with some of the top level threes in the world. And just to be clear, this podcast and any information provided herein is not intended to be formal training. In this episode of Level Up, we are talking with Alan Gress from Comet X-ray, and he is also the current president of NDTMA. Alan is an ASNT Level 3 in RT, VT, MT, and PT, as well as the Certified Weld Inspector, CWI. Alan has over 35 years experience in non-destructive testing, quality management, quality engineering, and operational management. He worked at NASA as a contractor for 18 years, providing NDE inspections on site at Johnson Space Center. He also worked for Howden North America as quality engineer corporate level 3, providing vendor surveillance and NDE training corporate wide. Then Alan worked for Element Materials Technology for 12 years as the operations manager and responsible level 3, where he managed the NDE lab and materials testing lab for the oil and gas and aerospace industries. Alan has a degree in business management. Even I didn't know all of that stuff about you, Alan, and I have known you for quite some time. Thanks for being here today.
Glad to be here.
So, we always like to start with this question because everyone seems to have a story about how they got into NDT. Very few people just hear about NDT and decide that's what they want to do, like I did. But most people have a story about how they got into it. So can you tell us a little bit about how you got into NDT?
Well, like most people that I run across in my career, most people I got into it by accident. Out of high school, I was a riveter at Grumman Aerospace and trying to figure out what to do with my life, and so I went to A&P school to be an airplane mechanic. Graduated that. There were no jobs in the industry to work at airlines, so I applied for a job at NASA. Got a job as a quality inspector out at NASA. Just so happened they put me in the building where the NDE took place. So made friends with the NDE technicians, uh, grew an interest in what they were doing. It was far more interesting than what I was doing. Taking notes of tests they were running uh, in the lab. The head of engineering, who was over the NDE department for engineering, uh, did not want to do the NDT for the quality uh, department. So he got with my boss and said, "Hey, you need to send somebody to training." I happened to be in the building, so I volunteered for the training, and thus my NDE career started. And then from there, uh, got my certifications, and my first certification was in film interpretation, then mag penetrant, ultrasonics, radiography, um, and that's how I got into NDT.
That is very cool. I am glad you got into NDT.
Me too.
Um, So you're fairly new to the Comet X-ray side of the business, recently coming from Comet Exelon. Can you tell us a little bit about your role, your current role with Comet?
So Common has a unique selling structure in that they sell through their channel partners. So my job is to really give technical expertise to their sales department, talk to the end users when they have questions about, radiography. My what I'm finding out is my past life at Element really plays a role in how I sell and my relationship with the channel partners, because not only do I give technical advice on, radiography, what can this tube do over that tube is I find myself in these conversations where, will we do this operationally? Is there another way that I can do that? Do you have any insights on how we can, work your tubes into our operations. So I'm finding that, my overall expertise and my career path kind of fits with what we do at Comet.
Excellent. So a little more applications engineering as well, huh?
Yes.
So you also contribute to the NDT industry through your volunteer work with NDTMA over the last decade. Can you tell us why you volunteer for NDTMA and maybe what you're excited about for this year as president?
Yeah, so I volunteer with NDTMA because I believe in the organization. There's organizations like ASNT, and I didn't really fit what I wanted to do, where my career was going. I started to move into management and looking for an outlet on how to better myself as a manager, and NDTMA kind of fit that bill. So I started volunteering, started serving on the board of directors. Um, I love all aspects of NDTMA, just because it's a forum where other level threes, other managers, engineers who are developing products for the industry all come together in one place, and we can have conversations, and we can have conversations even though we're competitors, and have conversations about how do we make the industry better, what new technologies are out there, how can we implement those new technologies. If I wanted to start my own business, who can help me with that, and where can I find mentors. And it's an all one place where we can all come together from an industry standpoint to make things better. As president, I'm excited to help the executive team along with the board of directors to set new expectations for the next 5 years. Just in my time serving at NDTMA, I've seen huge growth, not just in the conference, but the committee that drives the organization, the committees that drive the organization. These committees are stretching our boundaries. I like the fact that we have committees that sometimes fail, and we learn from those failures. We have committees that succeed and just make the organization better. So that I'm really excited about, those moving forward, and what NDTMA is going to be over the next 5 years, and what impact I can have on that just in my as president.
Yeah, and I I agree with all of that. That's why I became why my company became a member or company for NDTMA back before I was even on the board or anything. So it was really because it was such a collaborative environment, and I could see that people were really pushing not only the organization forward, but the industry forward. It's a small organization, but they seem to be able, therefore, to take a little more risks and to take a little more initiative in where the industry needs to go to tackle some of its challenges with workforce development or with emerging technologies and that sort of thing. So I think my whole career has been on that side too, in terms of pushing the boundaries and yours as well. So it's a great place for us to all get together and do that. So I'm excited for this year as well. You're probably very
Good.
excited to have the program over as well. You are no longer the program chair.
Well, as stressful as that was, it was, I had a lot of fun doing it. And there's a lot of satisfaction when you sit the last day of the conference, and kind of look back on your year, and you get to see the whole thing come together. It was satisfying, to say the least.
Yeah, and it was a really successful program. We had a lot of good feedback on the speakers and the sessions, and so good job. Um, So we always like to ask our guests, what do you see coming in the future of NDT?
Where do I see the future of NDT? I'm not shy about this. I think the future of NDT lies in AI. Um, just the advances that we've seen in AI over the last 5 years is been exponential, and it's just going to continue to grow. Um, as I go around and I have these conversations with customers, with my Comet job, I find that the AI platforms, most of them are developing their own platforms because you have the open AI, and so you have the platform already. And so most of these companies are starting to develop their own AI platforms, so that, because everything revolves around the data that they have, and they don't want to share that data. So now they have to,
Mhm.
you know, make this their own AI platform using their data, so it's not being shared in the industry. But where I see AI affecting NDE as a whole is on the training side. Um, Training is and always will be an issue in NDE. We have these long training cycles for OJT. You go to class for 2 weeks, and then for the next year and a half, you're in this OJT spin cycle. So where I see AI really taking a foothold is on the training side, where we can take immersive training, where the level 3 has control of that training now, but we can do it through an AI platform, uh, to really shorten that training cycle so that we can get more technicians out in the field. With the AI revolution, we also have to determine what results are acceptable, what results are failure. How are we going to do this as an industry is still up in the air. Uh, I'm on an API committee, and we addressed it in the last update of 20E, was that you can use it, but you can't use it to make final acceptance. And we stopped there because over the next 5 years, when the next iteration of that revision comes out, there will be a whole section on AI, because the AI is going to take huge advancements in the next 5 years. Where we have to, as an industry, look at how we're going to use technicians in an AI world. I don't think we know that yet. Um, how what are we going to train them for when the AI is making the accept reject criteria? I don't think that we can, as an industry, ask somebody to come work for us and say you're a button pusher now. So there has to be some kind of, as an industry, how do we retain technicians that we've been training over the last 20 years? How do we retain them and their expertise in an AI world? And I think that's the biggest challenge. But it's the future, and it's coming, and we can't avoid it.
Yeah, I think we'll see a shift towards, higher level decision making, right? So we're looking at even now we're looking at assisted defect recognition, and I'm not sure we're ever going to get to automated defect recognition, right? I think there's still going to be have to be a human in the loop to make sense of the structure or the component that we're looking at and why we might be getting some indications, and then do interpretation.
Well, I think probably not in my life, but I think we're going to get to the point where the computer is making the decision, and I say that because the end user, the OEMs, are going to push for that to happen. Um, so I think, in my personal opinion, I think that's where the level 3 role is going to expand. So there's going to have to be some kind of audit function on any AI system. Who's going to
Mhm.
do that audit function? That would be the level 3. So you're going to have this continual audit function. If the computer's making the decisions, some human has to make an make audit decisions on is it working as we expected it to? Is it finding all the defects we expect it to? Is it missing defects? And so I believe that's where the level 3 role is going to end up, in some kind of audit function on an AI platform somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or I could be way out there, one or the other.
Well, who knows, right? It's going to be, I think we're all going to move in that direction until there's a problem, right? And so it's taking baby steps in that direction so that we don't have a catastrophic problem in the learning experience to get there, you know?
Absolutely.
And of course, we're going to see it on the manufacturing side long before we see it in the field, I think. There's just too many
Yeah.
variables in the field that are going to impede that progress.
Yep. Like I said, I don't think it'll happen in my lifetime, but I think we're going to make great strides between, now and the end of my career, whenever that ends.
Yeah. So, our last question to all of our guests is, what advice do you have for those entering NDT or at the beginning of the career? Which, of course, is a good question given what we just talked about.
So I read this question, and I'm going to start this question off with, so when I worked for Grumman, I got laid off. It's the only time in my career I got laid off. And when I got laid off, I asked the guy that laid me off, I said, how do I get off this list? So now, over the years, I've had to lay off several people. I've had several layoffs over the years where I've laid off, a lot of people. It's not a fun job. No one's ever asked me that question. Out of all the people I've laid off in my career, no one's ever asked me that question. How do I get off this list? These lists are generated for a reason. And so my advice to any technicians that are out in the field or coming up in the field, or just getting in the industry, is never stop learning. Always look for that next certification. Always look for that next opportunity. Never stop learning. I've seen it so many times in my career where NDE technician comes in and he says, "Well, I just want to be a radiographer," and then he limits himself to just that. And my advice is, look for opportunities in company you're looking for. We have this um, problem in the industry where someone will go down the street for 50 cents more an hour. Well, it's not always about the money. So it's if you look at your career in a totality, like, what do I want to be 20 years from now if I'm just starting? Well, I want to be a level 3. Well, what does it take to get to level 3? Chasing the dollar doesn't get you to the level 3. It never has and never will.
Mhm.
If you stick it out with a company that's willing to invest in your career, that's the first thing you need, is a company that's willing to invest in your career and willing to help you grow in other methods. Then my advice is, stay with that company and grow as far as you can grow. None of us are going to work for one company for the rest of our lives unless we start our own business. But use the resources that the company's offering to get as many certifications as you could possibly get, because the more certifications you have, the more important you are to companies. And I don't know any technicians that are multi-certified that have ever been out of work in this industry. But I've seen a lot of them with one certification that have been out, that find themselves on the layoff list at some point in time.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I mean, even for me, as I started my career, I ended up taking a job as director of marketing at a engineering firm because I really wanted to work for that company and for the CEO. And I ended up learning about transportation engineering and doing a big project for the New York Mets. Um, while I was director of marketing and I was doing infrastructure stuff. So I mean, and now I own a marketing company, and in addition to all the engineering and NDT stuff I'm doing. So um, I think it's great advice. And to me, it's also nothing is beneath you, like somebody's got a job, do the job, see how you can help out the whole team. And those are the kinds of people that people want to continue working and they want to invest in terms of getting, helping them get certifications and stuff. So I think being a team player and you know, doing whatever job comes your way and doing it well, I think that's the way to not be laid off.
Yes. Well, and when I worked at NASA, I used to tell myself, well, I'll get this certification, then I'll go look for another job. I'll get this certification and had all my level twos. And I said, well, then I started looking at the industry and I didn't make as much as they did, but I didn't make that much less than they did. And I was given the opportunity to go get my CWI and I was given the opportunity to get level threes. And so then I stayed that direction. Okay, well, I'll get my level threes and I'll go in the field. And then I decided, well, I'm going to go back to school and get my degree and went back to school and got my degree. At that point, I had managed to get everything out of that opportunity that when I worked at NASA that I could possibly get. And in order to take my career forward, because it's an engineering top heavy organization and I had a management degree, I had to leave and, my career took off from there. So,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, well, thank you again for joining us today, Alan. I very much enjoyed the conversation, even though we get to talk all the time. Again, I learned a lot from today. So thank you.
you're welcome. I enjoyed the conversation. Thank you.
And thank you all for listening. Remember to listen to Level Up and all of our NDT Now podcasts brought to you by Edified Technologies.